They say no good deed goes unpunished, but for Katie Vance, one act of kindness didn't just bring punishment, it brought a war. When she found a shivering, terrified child behind her diner, she thought she was just saving a lost boy. She didn't know that the boy was the heir to the most dangerous criminal empire on the East Coast. She didn't know his father was already tearing the city apart to find him. And she certainly didn't know that by holding that child's hand, she had just placed a target on her own back. This is the story of how a waitress met the devil, and why he fell to his knees. The neon sign of Miller's all-night diner buzzed with an irritating insect-like hum, flickering against the relentless Chicago downpour. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee, grease, and the lemon-scented despair of 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Katie Vance wiped the counter for the 100th time, her movements mechanical. At 23, Katie carried the exhaustion of someone twice her age. The name tag on her uniform was crooked, and her brown hair was pulled back in a fraying, messy bun. In her pocket, her phone vibrated. Another collection notice from St. Jude's Medical Center regarding her mother's palliative care bills. She ignored it. She had $12 in her bank account until Friday. "Katie, lock up the back, will you?" her manager Rick shouted from the office, not bothering to look up from his racing form. "On it," Katie muttered. She grabbed a heavy bag of trash, kicked open the rear metal door, and stepped out into the alley. The rain hit her instantly, soaking through her thin uniform. The alley was a dark throat of brick and shadow, usually occupied only by rats and overflowing dumpsters. She heaved the bag into the bin and turned to leave, but a sound stopped her. It wasn't the scuttle of a rat. It was a whimper. Katie squinted into the gloom behind a stack of wooden pallets. "Hello? Is someone there?" Silence, save for the rain drumming on the metal lids. She took a cautious step forward, her hand instinctively going to the pepper spray on her keychain. "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm just closing up." A small sneaker poked out from behind a crate. It was white leather, or it had been, before the mud. It looked expensive. Katie dropped to her knees, ignoring the dirty puddle soaking her jeans. "Hey," she whispered, her voice softening. A face peered out. It was a boy, no older than 6. He was trembling so violently, his teeth chattered audibly. He wore a tuxedo jacket that was 3 sizes too big for him. Clearly a man's suit jacket wrapped around his small frame, and underneath, his white shirt was stained with dirt and what looked alarmingly like dried blood. "Oh my God," Katie breathed. She reached out, but the boy flinched, pressing himself harder against the cold brick wall. His eyes were wide, dark, and terrified. "I'm not going to hurt you," Katie said, holding her hands up. "My name is Katie. Are you lost?" The boy didn't speak. He just stared at the door to the diner, where the warmth and light spilled out. "Are you hungry?" she asked. That got a reaction. The boy nodded once, a tiny, jerky movement. "Okay, come inside. I have pie. Do you like cherry pie?" It took 5 minutes of coaxing, but eventually the boy took her hand. His grip was ice cold. As she led him into the kitchen, the harsh fluorescent lights revealed the truth. The blood on his shirt wasn't his. He wasn't injured, just frozen to the bone. But the tuxedo jacket wrapped around him. Katie noticed the lining. It was silk, and embroidered on the inside pocket were initials in gold thread, LV. She sat him down at the corner booth, the one hidden from the street windows. She grabbed a warm towel from the kitchen and wrapped it around his hair, then plated a massive slice of cherry pie and poured a glass of milk. "What's your name, sweetie?" she asked, sliding into the booth opposite him. The boy shoveled a forkful of pie into his mouth, his eyes darting to the windows every few seconds. He swallowed hard. "Leo," he whispered. "Leo. That's a strong name." Katie smiled, though her heart was hammering. "Leo, where are your parents? Did something happen?" Leo froze. He put the fork down. Tears welled up in his eyes, spilling over immediately. "The bad men," he choked out. "They took the car. Papa told me to run. He said run and don't stop." Katie's stomach dropped. This wasn't a case of a kid wandering off at the mall. This was a crime scene. "Okay, Leo, listen to me. You're safe here," Katie lied. She didn't feel safe. She felt like she was standing on a train track. "I need to call the police, okay? They can help find your papa." "No!" Leo screamed, knocking the milk over. White liquid splashed across the table. "No police! Papa said no police. They work for him." "Him? Who is him?" "The man with the snake tattoo." Leo sobbed. Katie grabbed napkins, frantically wiping the milk. No police. If the father was involved in something where the police couldn't be trusted, that meant organized crime. She was sitting in a diner with the child of a criminal, and the people who wanted him were likely still looking. She needed to get him out of here. She needed to take him to the fire station on 4th Street. It was a safe haven. "Okay, no police," Katie soothed him. "We'll figure this out. I have a car. I can take you somewhere safe." She stood up to grab her purse from behind the counter. That was when the headlights swept across the diner. It wasn't just one car. It was 3. Massive, matte black Cadillac Escalades screeched to a halt directly in front of the diner, blocking the entire street. They didn't park. They swarmed. Katie froze. "Leo," she hissed, "get under the table." Now, Leo scrambled under the booth. The front door of the diner didn't open. It was kicked in. The bell shattered against the glass. 3 men entered first. They were dressed in tactical gear, holding assault rifles, their faces covered by balaclavas. They moved with military precision, sweeping the room. "Clear left! Clear right!" Then, a 4th man entered. He wasn't wearing tactical gear. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that likely cost more than the entire diner. He was tall, well over 6'3", with shoulders that filled the doorway. His hair was dark, slicked back, and his face was a mask of cold, beautiful fury. He didn't have a gun in his hand. He didn't need one. He looked like the god of death. It was Lorenzo Enzo Valenti, the head of the Valenti crime family. Katie had seen his face on the news, usually accompanied by words like, quote, "alleged" and "untouchable." Enzo scanned the room, his eyes landing on Katie. She was standing behind the counter, clutching a pot of coffee like a weapon. Enzo walked toward her. Every step echoed on the linoleum. The air in the diner seemed to vanish, sucked into the vacuum of his presence. He stopped at the counter. He saw the spilled milk on the table in the corner. He saw the half-eaten pie. He looked at Katie. His eyes were the color of steel. "Where is he?" Enzo asked. His voice was low, smooth, and terrifyingly calm. Katie couldn't breathe. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Enzo reached over the counter, grabbing Katie by the collar of her uniform and pulling her close. The smell of expensive cologne and gunpowder filled her nose. "I will ask you once," Enzo growled, the calm veneer cracking to reveal the monster beneath. "If you have touched a hair on his head, I will peel the skin from your bones." "Where is my son?" Katie's feet dangled inches off the floor. The fabric of her collar dug into her throat, choking her. She stared into Enzo Valenti's eyes and saw nothing but an abyss. This man wasn't asking a question. He was delivering a verdict. I didn't," she rasped, clawing at his hand. His grip was iron. One of the tactical men shouted, "Boss, we found a jacket in the alley. It's the boys." Enzo's eyes flared. He tightened his grip. "You took him? You're working with the Viper?" "No!" Katie managed to scream. "He's hiding!" She pointed a shaking finger toward the corner booth. Enzo dropped her instantly. Katie collapsed onto the dirty floor, gasping for air, clutching her throat. Enzo vaulted over the counter, rushing to the booth. He fell to his knees, ignoring the spilled milk soaking into his tailored trousers. He peered under the table. "Leo?" His voice broke. The monster vanished, replaced by a desperate father. "Leo, it's Papa. Look at me." Slowly, Leo crawled out. He was still shaking. He looked at the giant man kneeling before him, and then he launched himself into his father's arms. "Papa!" Enzo caught him. burying his face in the boy's neck. He squeezed him so tight, Katie thought he might crush him. For a solid 10 seconds, the only sound in the diner was the heavy breathing of the men and the soft sobs of the reunion. Enzo ran his hands over Leo's back, checking for injuries, checking for blood. "Did they hurt you?" "Tell me," Enzo demanded, pulling back to look at Leo's face. "No," Leo sniffled. He pointed a small finger at Katie, who was pulling herself up using the counter. "She gave me pie, and the warm towel." Enzo went still. He slowly stood up, lifting Leo easily onto his hip. He turned to face Katie. The steel was back in his eyes, but the murderous rage had dimmed to a cold calculation. "You found him?" Enzo asked. "In the alley." Katie coughed, her voice hoarse. "By the dumpsters. He was freezing. I brought him inside." Enzo studied her. He took in her frayed uniform, her tired eyes, the red marks on her neck where his hand had been. He looked at the pie on the table. "You didn't call the police," he stated. It wasn't a question. "He asked me not to," Katie said, trying to regain some dignity. She smoothed her apron. He said the police work for the bad men." Enzo's jaw tightened. "Smart boy." He stepped closer to her. The armed men lowered their weapons slightly, but they didn't safe them. "You know who I am?" Enzo asked. "I watched the news, Mr. Valenti," Katie replied. She was terrified, but she was also angry. He had just choked her. "You're the reason my rent is going up and why this neighborhood is a war zone." One of the guards stepped forward. "Watch your mouth." Enzo held up a hand to silence the guard. He looked at Katie with a flicker of interest. Most people trembled before him. She was trembling, but she was still standing. "You saved my son's life tonight, miss." He glanced at her crooked name tag. "Katie." "I just gave him a slice of pie," she said. "You can take him and go, please." Enzo reached into his jacket pocket. Katie flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, he pulled out a money clip. It was thick with $100 bills. He peeled off the entire stack, easily $5,000, and tossed it onto the counter. "For the pie," Enzo said, "and for your silence. You never saw us. You never saw him. If anyone asks, you were closed tonight." Katie looked at the money. It was enough to pay off her mother's medical bills for 2 months. It was a lifeline, but it felt like blood money. "I don't want your money," she said, quietly. "Just leave." Enzo's eyes narrowed. "Everyone wants money, Katie. Don't be a martyr. It doesn't pay well." He turned to his men. "Let's move. The Viper knows we're close. We need to get Leo back to the estate." The men formed a protective circle around Enzo and Leo. They began to move toward the door. Katie let out a breath she had been holding. It was over. But as Enzo reached the door, the glass of the diner's front window exploded. Crack, thwump! A bullet slammed into the door frame, inches from Enzo's head. "Ambush!" A guard screamed. Chaos erupted. The tranquil diner transformed into a battlefield in a split second. Gunfire erupted from the street, tearing through the glass, shredding the vinyl booths. "Get down!" Enzo roared, throwing himself and Leo to the floor behind the counter. Katie screamed as a napkin dispenser exploded next to her head. She dropped to the floor, crawling toward the kitchen. "Cover the boss!" Bullets chewed up the walls. The bad men had found them. Enzo looked at the back exit, then at Katie. He saw her trying to crawl away. He looked at the front of the diner. It was a kill zone. They were pinned down. "Marcus," Enzo shouted to his head of security. "Back door. Is it clear?" "They're flanking us, boss. We're surrounded." Enzo looked at Leo, who was curled in a ball, covering his ears. Then he looked at Katie. She knew the building. Enzo grabbed Katie's ankle, dragging her behind the heavy steel counter. "Get off me!" she shrieked. "Is there a basement?" Enzo barked, racking the slide of a sleek black pistol he had drawn from a shoulder holster. "Answer me! Is there a way out?" The grease trap hatch," Katie stammered, pointing to a rug near the pantry. It leads to the old coal tunnels. They come out on 5th Avenue. Enzo looked at the rug, then at the front windows, which were being decimated by automatic fire. "Marcus, suppressive fire! We're going underground!" Enzo grabbed Katie by the arm, yanking her up. "I'm not going with you," she yelled. Enzo looked at her, his eyes wild. "You think they're going to leave a witness? You've seen my son. You've seen me. If they come in here, they kill everyone. You come with me or you die here. Choose." A bullet struck the coffee machine above them, showering them in hot water and glass. Katie looked at the door. She looked at Enzo's extended hand. She grabbed his hand. "Go!" Enzo commanded. He kicked the rug aside and hauled open the heavy trap door. He dropped Leo down first, then shoved Katie into the darkness. He fired 3 shots toward the front window, dropping an attacker who had breached the door, and then jumped into the hole after them, slamming the hatch shut just as a grenade rolled across the diner floor. Boom! The world above them turned to fire. Katie landed in the dirt, coughing, surrounded by darkness, trapped with the most dangerous man in the city. She had saved the boy. Now she was the prisoner. The tunnel smelled of century-old dust, rat droppings, and the metallic tang of fear. It was pitch black, save for the narrow beam of tactical light emanating from Enzo's pistol. "Keep moving," Enzo's voice echoed, low and harsh against the damp brick walls. "Don't stop." Katie stumbled, her sneaker catching on a rusted rail tie. She fell hard onto her hands and knees, the gravel biting into her skin. I can't see," she gasped. Her breath was coming in short, panicked bursts. Above them, the muffled thump-thump of explosions vibrated through the earth. The diner, her job, her only source of income, was gone. Leo, who was clinging to the back of Enzo's suit jacket, turned back. "Miss Katie?" Enzo stopped. He swung the light back, blinding her for a second. He saw the blood welling on her palms. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered efficiency. He holstered the gun, scooped Leo up into his left arm, and reached down with his right hand to haul Katie to her feet. "Adrenaline is the only thing keeping you walking right now," Enzo said, his tone devoid of warmth but strangely grounding. "If you stop, the shock sets in. If the shock sets in, I have to carry you. And I cannot carry both of you and shoot at the same time. Walk." Katie looked at him. In the harsh light, the sharp angles of his face looked like cut marble. He was terrifying. But he was also the only thing standing between her and a bullet. She gritted her teeth, wiped her bloody hands on her apron, and nodded. "Lead the way." They moved for another 10 minutes, navigating the labyrinth of the old coal transport system. Katie's mind raced. Who was this man? The Valenti family was a myth in the city, whispered about in fear, blamed for the docks, the unions, the high-rises. And she was currently fleeing a hit squad with the heir to the throne. Finally, they reached a rusted iron ladder leading up to a maintenance hatch. Enzo handed Leo to Katie. "Hold him. If I fall, you don't catch me. You drop back and hide." "Comforting," Katie muttered. Enzo climbed the ladder, pushing the heavy grate open with a grunt of exertion. The sounds of the city, rain, distant sirens, honking horns, flooded in. It was music to Katie's ears. He climbed out, checked the perimeter, and then reached down. "Clear. Come up." They emerged in an alleyway 3 blocks east of the diner. The rain was still pouring, washing the tunnel filth off their clothes. Enzo immediately pulled a sleek, waterproof burner phone from his pocket. He dialed a single number. "Status," he barked. A pause. "The diner is compromised. I'm at Extraction Point, Charlie. Bring the Ghost. No, not the SUV. I want the unmarked sedan. 3 minutes." He hung up and snapped the phone in half, tossing the pieces into a sewer grate. "You destroyed the phone?" Katie asked, shivering as the wind cut through her wet uniform. "They tracked the GPS in the Escalades," Enzo said, his eyes scanning the rooftops. "There's a leak in my organization. Someone told Thorne where we were." "Thorne?" "Julian Thorne." "The Viper," Leo whispered, pressing his face into Katie's hip. "He's a bad man." Katie instinctively put a hand on Leo's head. "Why does he want you, Leo?" Enzo turned, his gaze sharp. "Because Leo is my weakness, and Thorn wants to break me before he kills me." A nondescript gray Honda Accord rolled to a stop at the mouth of the alley. It looked like an Uber, completely unremarkable. The window rolled down, revealing Marcus, the head of security, who had been in the diner. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he looked calm. "Boss," Marcus nodded, "we lost 2 men. But we cleared the street." Enzo opened the back door. "Get in." Katie hesitated. "My car, it's back at the diner." "Your car is a smoking wreck," Enzo said, losing patience. "Get in the car, Katie, or stay here and explain to Thorne's men why you helped us escape." She got in. The drive was silent and fast. They didn't go to the police station. They drove out of the city, toward the wealthy cliffside estates of Lake Forest. They passed heavy iron gates, winding driveways, and security cameras that tracked their every move. Finally, they pulled up to a massive limestone mansion that looked more like a fortress than a home. High walls, barbed wire hidden in the ivy, and armed guards patrolling the perimeter with Dobermans. "Welcome to Valenti Manor," Marcus muttered from the front seat. Enzo got out, pulling Leo with him. Katie followed, feeling small and out of place in her grease-stained uniform. Inside, the house was a palace of cold luxury, marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and priceless art on the walls. But it felt empty, sterile. A stern older woman in a stiff black dress came rushing down the grand staircase. This was Isabella, the housekeeper. "Dio mio, Leo!" She fell to her knees, hugging the boy. "We heard the news. We thought—" "Take him upstairs, Isabella," Enzo commanded, shrugging off his ruined suit jacket. "Bath, hot food, and call Dr. Sterling. I want him checked for everything. Stress, exposure, everything." "And the girl?" Isabella asked, eyeing Katie with suspicion. Enzo paused. He turned to look at Katie. She was standing in the center of the foyer, hugging herself, shivering, looking at the door like she might bolt. "She stays," Enzo said. "Excuse me?" Katie's head snapped up. "I am not staying here. You said you'd pay me for the pie. I don't want the money. I just want to go home to my mom." Enzo walked over to her, invading her personal space again. The heat radiating off him was intense. "You don't have room anymore, Katie," he said softly, ruthlessly. "Thorne saw your face. His men saw you go down that hatch with me. By now your name, your address, and your financial records are on his desk." Katie felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you walk out that door, you will be dead within the hour." "And your mother?" Enzo paused, checking a file Marcus had just handed him on a tablet. "Margaret Vance, St. Jude's Palliative Care Unit. Room 304. Lung condition." Katie lunged at him. "Don't you dare come near her." Enzo caught her wrist easily. He didn't squeeze. He just held her. "I won't hurt her," Enzo said, his voice dropping to a rumble. "But Thorne will. He'll use her to get to you, to get to me." "You are a loose end, Katie. In my world, loose ends get cut." "So you're going to kill me?" Tears stung her eyes. "No," Enzo said, releasing her wrist. "I'm going to hide you. You saved my son. The Valenti family pays its debts. You will stay here, under my protection, until I hunt down Thorne and end this war. Once he is dead, you are free. Until then, you are my guest." He turned to walk away. "And if I refuse?" Katie called out, her voice trembling. Enzo stopped at the foot of the stairs. He looked back over his shoulder, his dark eyes unreadable. "Then you can explain to your mother why the men in black masks are coming for her next." 3 days. Katie had been a prisoner in the Valenti estate for 3 days. It was a gilded cage, to be sure. Her room was larger than her entire apartment. The bed sheets were Egyptian cotton, The bathroom had a tub deep enough to swim in, and the view of the lake was breathtaking. But the door locked from the outside at night, and 2 guards stood at the end of the hallway 24/7. She had tried to leave twice. Both times Marcus had politely but firmly escorted her back from the front gate. "Mr. Valenti gave strict orders, Miss Vance, for your safety." She hadn't seen Enzo since that first night. He was a ghost, disappearing into his study or leaving in a convoy of SUVs before dawn. But she had seen Leo. The boy was traumatized. He refused to speak to the staff. He wouldn't eat for Isabella. He spent his days sitting in the window of the library, staring at the driveway, waiting for the bad men to come back. On the 4th afternoon, Katie was wandering the house. She was allowed to roam the interior when she heard shouting from the dining room. "Eat it, Leo. You are a Valenti." "Stop acting like a coward." It was Enzo. Katie followed the sound. She found them in the massive dining hall. Leo was sitting at the end of a long mahogany table, shrinking into his chair. A plate of untouched pasta was in front of him. Enzo was standing over him, slamming his hand on the table. "I have a war to fight," Enzo shouted, his frustration boiling over. "I cannot fight if I am worried you are starving yourself. Eat!" Leo burst into tears. "I want to go home. I want Mommy." The room went deadly silent. Even the guards looked away. Katie knew from the brief news reports she'd read on her phone that Enzo's wife had died 3 years ago in a car accident, an accident rumored to be a hit. Enzo looked like he had been slapped. His face hardened into a mask of cruelty to hide the pain. "Your mother is gone. I am what you have, and I need you to be strong." He reached out to grab Leo's shoulder. Leo flinched violently, knocking the pasta onto the floor. The ceramic plate shattered. Enzo raised his hand, not to strike, but in frustration. But Leo didn't know that. He curled into a ball, screaming. "Stop it!" Katie didn't think. She moved. She stormed into the room, placing herself directly between the Mafia Don and his son. Enzo froze, his hand suspended in the air. He looked at Katie, stunned. No one interrupted Enzo Valenti. No one. "Get out of my way," Enzo growled, his voice a low warning. "No," Katie snapped. She wasn't trembling this time. She was furious. "Look at him. He's 6 years old. He was kidnapped, held at gunpoint, and almost blown up. He's not being a coward. He's having a panic attack. You absolute idiot." The guards put their hands on their holsters. Enzo stared at her. His eyes narrowed. "What did you call me?" "I called you an idiot," Katie said, poking him in the chest. "You might know how to run a criminal empire, Mr. Valenti, but you have no clue how to be a father. You're scaring him." She turned her back on Enzo, a move that was practically suicidal, and knelt down next to Leo. "Hey, Leo," she whispered, her voice instantly changing from fierce to gentle. "It's okay. The plate just slipped. Look, it's just pasta." Leo peeked out from his hands. "Papa is mad. Papa is tired," Katie lied, glancing back at Enzo with a glare. "And he's loud. But he's not gonna hurt you. Are you hungry, Leo? I bet this fancy pasta tastes like cardboard anyway. You know what I can make." Leo sniffled. "What?" "Grilled cheese. The greasy diner kind, with extra butter, and I can cut the crusts off." Leo's eyes lit up a fraction. "Can we have ketchup?" "Obviously. It's illegal to have grilled cheese without ketchup." Katie stood up, holding Leo's hand. She looked at Enzo, who was still standing there, stunned into silence. "I'm taking him to the kitchen," Katie declared. "If you want to yell at someone, yell at the wall." She led Leo out of the room. Enzo watched them go. He looked at the shattered plate on the floor. He looked at his hand. Slowly, the tension left his shoulders. He looked at Marcus, who was standing in the corner trying very hard not to smirk. "She called me an idiot," Enzo muttered. "Yes, boss, she did." "She has fire," Enzo said, a strange look crossing his face. A look that wasn't anger. It was respect. "Cancel my meeting with the capos. I'm eating grilled cheese." Later that night, the atmosphere in the kitchen was bizarrely domestic. Katie was at the industrial stove, flipping sandwiches. Leo was sitting on the counter, swinging his legs. And Enzo Valenti, the king of Chicago, was leaning against the refrigerator, drinking a beer and watching Katie cook. "You handle him well," Enzo said quietly. "I have 3 younger brothers," Katie said, sliding a sandwich onto a plate for Leo. "And I worked in a diner for 5 years. I know how to handle hangry boys, even the grown-up ones." Enzo took a sip of his beer, his eyes tracking her movements. "I looked into your file, Katie." Katie stiffened. "I know. You told me." "I looked deeper," Enzo said. "You were a student at Northwestern. Pre-med. Top of your class. You dropped out 2 years ago." Katie turned off the stove. The playfulness vanished. "My mother got sick. Insurance wouldn't cover the experimental treatment. I needed to work full-time. Tuition was too expensive." "You gave up your future to flip burgers?" "I gave up my future to keep my mother alive." Katie corrected him sharply. "I'd do it again." Enzo stepped closer. The kitchen felt suddenly small. "Loyalty," he murmured. "It's a rare currency. You have it in spades." He reached out, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair away from her face. The touch was electric. Katie held her breath. For a man who dealt in death, his touch was surprisingly gentle. "I made a move regarding your mother," Enzo said. Katie pulled back. "What did you do?" "I had her transferred this morning." "Transferred? Where?" "If you moved her to some cheap facility." "I moved her here," Enzo said calmly. "To the East Wing. I have a private medical suite. Dr. Sterling is one of the best oncologists in the country. He's on my payroll. He's treating her now." Katie stared at him, her mouth falling open. "You? She's here?" "It was the only way to secure her safety," Enzo said. "And it seemed like the only way to get you to stop looking at the front door." Katie felt tears prick her eyes. St. Jude's was understaffed and underfunded. A private oncologist was a dream she couldn't even afford to have. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" "Because you saved my son," Enzo said. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. "And because I find myself disliking the idea of you leaving." The moment hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. Katie's heart hammered against her ribs. She should hate him. He was a criminal. He was dangerous. But standing there, in the dim light of the kitchen, looking at the man who had just saved her mother, she felt something dangerous stirring. Suddenly, the kitchen door burst open. It was Marcus. He looked pale. He held a phone in his hand. "Boss, we have a problem." Enzo didn't look away from Katie. "It can wait." "It can't," Marcus said grimly. "We found the leak. We know who told Thorne about the diner." Enzo's face instantly turned to stone. The father and the flirt were gone. The Don was back. "Who?" Marcus hesitated, glancing at Katie. "It wasn't one of our men, boss." Enzo turned to Marcus. "Speak." "It was a burner phone call made from inside the diner," Marcus said. 10 minutes before you arrived." Enzo went very still. He turned slowly to face Katie. The warmth in his eyes had vanished, replaced by a glacial zero. "Katie," Enzo said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you make a call before you went out to the alley?" Katie blinked, confused. No. My manager, Rick, was in the office. He was on the phone all night, betting on horses." "Rick?" Enzo asked. "My boss. He owes money to everyone." Enzo's jaw clenched. "Rick sold us out." "He wouldn't." Katie started, then stopped. Rick would do anything for money. "Marcus," Enzo commanded, walking toward the door. "Bring the car around. We're paying Rick a visit." "Enzo, wait!" Katie grabbed his arm. "He's a coward, but he's not a killer. Don't hurt him." Enzo looked down at her hand on his arm. He gently but firmly removed it. "He sold my son for a gambling debt," Enzo said. "I'm not going to hurt him, Katie." He pulled a black leather glove onto his right hand. "I'm going to make an example of him." Enzo walked out into the night, leaving Katie standing in the kitchen, realizing that she hadn't just been saved by a hero, She had fallen into the lair of a monster, and she was beginning to fear that she might be falling in love with him. The rain had turned into a torrential storm, hammering the roof of the armored Mercedes sedan as it tore through the sleeping streets of Chicago. The interior was silent, filled with a suffocating tension. Enzo sat in the back seat, staring out the window, his profile etched in stone. He was checking the magazine of his pistol, sliding it in and out with a rhythmic metallic click-clack that grated on Katie's nerves. "You didn't have to come," Enzo said, not looking at her. "Yes, I did," Katie replied, her voice steady despite the shaking of her hands. "Rick is my manager. I've known him for 5 years. He's a gambling addict and a coward, but if you go in there guns blazing, he'll freeze. You won't get answers. You'll just get a corpse." Enzo turned to her, his eyes cold. "A corpse sends a message." "A corpse can't tell you why he did it," Katie countered, "or what Thorne is planning next. You said you're a businessman, Enzo. Killing the only lead we have is bad business." Enzo studied her for a long moment. The streetlights flickered over her face, illuminating the determination in her eyes. "You drive a hard bargain, Katie Vance." The car screeched to a halt in front of the Starlight Motel, a rundown dive on the outskirts of the city, known for hourly rates and cockroaches. "He's in room 104, Marcus reported from the driver's seat, checking a tracker. His phone just pinged. Enzo kicked the door open. "Stay in the car." "Not a chance," Katie said, opening her door before he could stop her. They marched to room 104. Enzo didn't knock. He kicked the door just below the lock. The wood splintered with a deafening crack, and the door swung open. Rick was sitting on the edge of the stained mattress, frantically stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. When he saw Enzo, he screamed, dropping the bag. He scrambled backward, falling over the bed. "No, no, please! I didn't know!" Rick blubbered, holding his hands up. Enzo stepped into the room, filling the small space with a terrifying darkness. He grabbed Rick by the shirt and slammed him against the peeling wallpaper. "You sold my son," Enzo hissed. "For what? A few grand? A cleared debt?" "They made me," Rick sobbed, sweat pouring down his face. "Thorne. The Viper. He bought the building note last week. He said he'd burn the diner down with me inside if I didn't call him the moment the kid showed up." "How did he know the kid would show up there?" Katie asked, stepping out from behind Enzo. Rick's eyes widened when he saw her. "Katie? Oh God, Katie, run!" "These people are monsters." "You're the one who called them monsters, Rick," she said coldly. "Answer the question. How did Thorne know?" "He didn't know specifically," Rick stammered. "He has people everywhere. Gas stations, diners, convenience stores." He put a bounty out. 500 grand for the location of the boy. "I just wanted the money, Katie. I was going to lose everything." Enzo pressed the barrel of his gun against Rick's forehead. "And now you lose your life." "Wait," Rick shrieked. "There's more. They didn't just want the boy. They wanted the backpack." Enzo paused. "What backpack?" "The kid. He had a little backpack." "Spider-Man? He left it under the booth." Enzo looked at Katie. She shook her head. "I didn't see a backpack. Leo just had the jacket." "I hid it!" Rick cried. "After the shooting started, I saw it under the table. I grabbed it. I thought maybe there was cash in it. I hid it in the office safe before the place burned down." Enzo dropped Rick. "Is it still there?" "The building is ash," Rick wheezed, "but the floor's safe. It's fireproof. It might still be there." Enzo turned to Marcus. "Get a team to the diner ruins. Dig out that safe. Now." He turned back to Rick. The rage was still there, simmering, but the immediate desire to kill had been replaced by strategy. "You're going to leave town, Rick," Enzo said quietly. "You're going to go to the bus station, and you're going to buy a ticket to somewhere very far away. If I ever see your face in Chicago again, I won't be this merciful." Rick nodded frantically, weeping. "Thank you, thank you." "Don't thank me," Enzo said, glancing at Katie. Thank her. She's the only reason you're still breathing. Enzo walked out into the rain. Katie looked at Rick one last time, a man she had once shared coffees and jokes with, and felt nothing but pity. She turned and followed the mob boss. Back in the car, the adrenaline crashed. Katie leaned her head back against the leather seat, closing her eyes. You did good. Enzo's voice came from the darkness. It was softer now. He was pathetic, Katie whispered. Fear makes people pathetic, Enzo said. It strips away their humanity. You didn't break. You stood between me and him. You have courage, Katie. He reached across the seat, taking her hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. It wasn't a romantic gesture, exactly. It was an anchor. He was grounding her. What's in the backpack, Enzo? She asked, opening her eyes to look at him. I don't know, Enzo admitted, his face grim. But if Thorne wants it bad enough to burn down a city block, it's not a toy, it's a weapon. The mystery of the backpack was solved within the hour. Inside the fireproof safe, recovered from the diner ruins, sat a ruggedized hard drive. It's biometric, Marcus explained, frustrated, tapping the laptop in Enzo's study. Dual authentication. We have Leo's print, but we need the second one. It belongs to Enzo's late accountant. Enzo paced the room, his expression grim. And Thorne has the accountant's severed thumb. He keeps trophies in his penthouse suite at the Grand Hotel. Katie, standing by the window in one of Enzo's oversized shirts, turned pale. You're joking. Thorne is hosting the Obsidian Gala there tomorrow night, Enzo continued, ignoring her horror. It's the perfect cover. I need to get into that penthouse to get the print. It's the only way to unlock the evidence that will bury him. He stopped pacing and looked at Katie. I can't get past the security alone, Enzo said. I need a distraction. I need a date. Enzo, I'm a waitress, Katie scoffed. I don't belong at a Mafia gala. To them, you're just a pretty face on my arm, Enzo replied, stepping into her personal space. While I distract Thorne at the high-stakes poker table, you will slip away to the penthouse. You have the courage, Katie. I saw it at the diner. The transformation took 3 hours. When Katie finally descended the grand staircase, the air left the room. She wore a gown of emerald green silk that hugged every curve, with a slit running up her thigh. A diamond necklace, worth more than her life's earnings, rested against her skin. Enzo was waiting at the bottom in a tuxedo. He froze. For a moment, the mission didn't matter. He just stared at her with a raw, hungry intensity. Well? Katie asked nervously. Do I pass? Enzo took her hand, kissing her knuckles. You look dangerous, he murmured. Thorne won't know what hit him. Blank, the Obsidian Gala was a sea of black ties, champagne, and hidden malice. Katie clung to Enzo's arm as they entered the Grand Hotel ballroom. Breathe, Enzo whispered. You belong here because I say you do. Enzo, my old friend! Julian Thorne, the Viper, approached them. He was handsome in a reptilian way, with dead blue eyes. I heard your last venue burned down. Insurance covered it, Enzo replied coolly. Julian, meet Katie, my fiancé. Thorne's eyes raked over Katie. Fiancé? You move fast, Enzo. I found my heart, Enzo lied smoothly, pulling Katie closer. Now I hear there's a poker game. I'm feeling lucky. As they moved toward the VIP room, Enzo stumbled slightly, bumping into Thorne. Apologies, he muttered. In the confusion, he pressed a stolen keycard into Katie's palm behind her back. Go, he mouthed. Katie slipped away, her heart hammering. She swiped the card at the private elevator. Penthouse. The suite was dark, lit only by the city lights. It was filled with glass cases. Katie moved quickly to the master bedroom, finding the hidden wall safe Enzo had described. Next to it, on a velvet pedestal, was a jar of formaldehyde containing the severed thumb. She suppressed a gag and reached for it. Ding! The elevator opened. Katie dove behind a heavy velvet curtain just as the lights flickered on. Thorne walked in, pouring himself a drink. He hadn't stayed at the poker table. I knew she looked familiar, Thorne said aloud, his voice echoing in the silent room. He walked toward the window, standing inches from Katie's hiding spot. She has Margaret Vance's eyes. Katie clamped a hand over her mouth. Margaret Vance, Thorne mused, swirling his scotch. The woman we poisoned at the factory 10 years ago. It was a messy cleanup. If that girl is her daughter, she's a loose end. Katie's world stopped. Her mother's lung condition. It wasn't bad luck. It was murder. Thorne had poisoned her. I can smell your perfume, Thorne whispered, turning toward the curtain. Come out, little mouse. Katie gripped the small canister of pepper spray Enzo had given her. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was an avenger. Thorne reached for the curtain. Click! The sound of a gun cocking came from the balcony. Step away, Julian, Enzo's voice rang out. He stood on the terrace, wind whipping his jacket. He had climbed up from the floor below. Thorne spun around, dropping his glass. Enzo! It's over, Enzo said, stepping into the room. Katie, come out! Katie stepped out, shaking with rage. You poisoned her, she accused Thorne. Thorne shrugged, smiling cruelly. Business is business. He pressed a button on his watch. Suddenly, steel shutters slammed down over the windows and balcony, sealing them inside. Red lights began to flash. Self-destruct sequence initiated. A robotic voice announced. 2 minutes to detonation. Thorne laughed, pulling a knife from his sleeve. If I go down, Enzo, I'm taking the King of Chicago with me. 1 minute and 30 seconds. The robotic voice intoned, indifferent to the panic rising in the room. Thorne lunged. He didn't go for Enzo. He went for Katie. He knew she was the weak point. He produced a jagged combat knife from his sleeve, slashing at her. Katie screamed, diving behind the heavy oak desk. The blade carved a deep gouge into the wood inches from her face. Coward! Enzo roared. He tackled Thorne, slamming him into the glass display cases. Shards of glass rained down on them. The two men rolled across the floor, a blur of tuxedo black and blood. Thorne was younger, faster, but Enzo fought with the desperation of a father and the fury of a man in love. You think you can beat me? Thorne spat, head-butting Enzo. I own this city. I own the police. I own your life. Enzo stumbled back, dazed, blood pouring from a cut above his eye. Thorne raised the knife for a killing blow. FSSHHHT. A cloud of burning orange mist engulfed Thorne's face. Katie stood there, her hand shaking, the empty canister of pepper spray clutched in her grip. She had crawled out from the desk while they fought. Thorne howled, dropping the knife and clawing at his eyes. My eyes, you bitch! That, Katie panted, is for my mother. Enzo didn't hesitate. He delivered a brutal roundhouse kick to Thorne's chest, sending the Viper crashing through the railing of the loft. Thorne landed in a heap on the lower level of the penthouse, unconscious. 30 seconds, the voice warned. The shutters are sealed, Katie cried, looking at the steel walls blocking the windows. We're trapped, Enzo grabbed her hand. Not yet, the trophy case. Give me the jar. Katie grabbed the horrific jar of formaldehyde containing the severed thumb. She didn't look at it. She just shoved it into Enzo's pocket. Enzo grabbed a heavy iron sculpture from a pedestal. He ran toward the corner of the room where the ventilation conduct met the floor. Get back! He slammed the sculpture into the floor vent, smashing the grate. Beneath it was a narrow shaft leading down. It drops to the laundry chute, Enzo yelled over the siren. Jump! Now! Enzo, it's too dark! Trust me! He didn't wait for her to agree. He wrapped his arms around her, shielding her head, and threw them both into the darkness. They slid down the metal chute, tumbling through the bowels of the hotel, just as the penthouse above them disintegrated. Boom! The explosion shook the entire building. Dust and debris rained down the shaft, but the fire didn't reach them. They landed hard in a pile of linens in the basement laundry room, coughing, bruised, but alive. Enzo groaned, rolling onto his back. He checked his pocket. The drive and the jar were safe. Then he looked at Katie. She was covered in soot, her expensive dress ruined, her hair a mess. She looked beautiful. "We made it," she whispered, staring at the ceiling. Enzo pulled her onto his chest, hugging her tightly. "We made it. Blank. 2 weeks later." The news was everywhere. Julian Thorne's criminal empire had collapsed overnight. The evidence on the drive, unlocked by the grim key they had retrieved, had implicated 3 senators, the police chief, and Thorne himself. Thorne's body had been found in the rubble, but his legacy was being dismantled, piece by piece. Katie stood on the balcony of the Valenti estate. The sun was setting over the lake. She heard footsteps behind her. "Dr. Sterling says your mother is responding to the new treatment," Enzo said, leaning on the railing beside her. "She woke up today. She asked for you." Katie smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Enzo, for everything." "You saved my son," Enzo said, "and you saved me. I think we're even." He reached into his pocket. Katie expected him to pull out a cigar or a phone. Instead, he pulled out a small velvet box. "I told Thorne you were my fiancé," Enzo said, his voice unusually nervous. "I don't like lying, Katie. It's bad for business." Katie's breath hitched. "Enzo, I'm not a good man," Enzo said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, one that wasn't stolen but bought. "But I want to be a better one. For Leo. And for you. Stay. Not as a guest, not as a witness. Stay as my partner." Katie looked at the ring, then at the man who had burned down the world to save his son, the man who had faced death for her. She took the ring and slid it onto her finger. "I'm going to need a raise at the diner," she joked, tears spilling over. Enzo grinned, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He pulled her in for a kiss that tasted of promise and dangerous tomorrows. "I think," Enzo whispered against her lips, "we can work something out." And that is the story of how a waitress tamed the beast. Justice was served, not just for Katie's mom, but for the whole city. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We release new dramatic stories every week. Check out the playlist on the screen for more billionaire romance and hidden identity twists. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.